The question is, do I have sex and how do I have sex? I figure I might as well just address the elephant in the room, or in this case, the giant wheelchair in the room, and just talk about the thing that apparently is on everyone's mind. Can disabled people have sex? Do disabled people have sex? How do they have sex? Hi there, I'm Shauna, and welcome to Too Taboo for You, where we're changing misconceptions about sex and disability. Okay, so we got through the first 4 episodes where we were kind of preparing for our adventure. Now, I think we should maybe dip our toe in the water a little bit and look at the first topic that actually talks about sex. Go figure. In calculating where I wanted to start this adventure, I clearly needed to do the intro episodes. But where do we kick off our adventure after that? Since the show is sex and disability, maybe I should just start with the obvious, which is a misunderstanding I am confronted with altogether too often. Honestly, I was a little surprised this topic was confusing to people. Let's just dive in, go for the gusto. The question is, do disabled people have sex? How do disabled people have sex? Can disabled people have sex? These are the questions that I didn't think I had to answer, but indeed, I'm here. I want to bring some clarity and change misconceptions, so we might as well talk about it. The best way to exemplify this in my true storytelling fashion is to just give you an example of how I was enlightened to the reality that there was some confusion about my sexuality, well, my ability to be sexual. I don't think the short hair is actually making people question my gender preference. Recently, I started a second sex adventure, which obviously we'll get into. And it was on this adventure that I encountered my first, call it disability sex collision moment. I attended a swingers meet and greet. Now, I am not a swinger yet, but I went in to check it out, see what was there. Honestly, like, what are the ages of the people? What are the types of the people? What kinds of things go down at the party? Can I spectate if I'm too trepidatious to join? So many questions. That's beside the point. Different episode. Upon arriving, I went to the bar, actually to order dinner because I was hungry, and a woman approached me. We chatted a little, my order came up, and I went away. I found a table, I looked back, and she was approaching me. I thought, oh, okay, well, someone to chit-chat with initially. She told me her husband was mingling somewhere, then proceeded to say, let's just harken back to my acting days and play out the scene for you.
So, is this your first time,
Oh, yeah, no, this is my first time. I've never been to a swingers party before. This is my first time, yeah.
No, I mean, is this your first time?
This is my first time coming to a swingers event. I've never done this before, so yeah, it's my first time here.
No, I mean, is this your first time, having sex?
Oh, in my lifetime? Or do you mean today? Wait, I'm confused. What?
Yeah, is this would this be your first time having sex? Have you ever had sex before?
Yeah. I have a grown daughter and it wasn't a one-time thing. So, yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, how do you?
I do it just like everyone else does it.
Yeah, but I mean, literally, how do you do it?
I mean, literally, I do it probably like you do, laying down. End scene. So that was my first introduction to why on earth would a 50-something-year-old woman ask a 40-something-year-old woman if this is her first time having sex. What a bizarre question. Oh, it's because of the chair and then the whole how do you do it? I've never had anyone ask me that. That's a bizarre question. Let me know down below. Have people asked you how you have sex? I can tell you in all the years that I would walk into a room, no one ever asked me that. Well, I wouldn't say no one. Men, probably thinking they're clever or cute or pickup lines, may have asked me some question about how I have sex. But no one sincerely had ever inquired as to whether or not I have ever had sex. How could I possibly do it? That they were so confused about the specific logistics of how. So I figure that's a great place to start. I figure I might as well just address the elephant in the room, or in this case, the giant wheelchair in the room, and just talk about the thing that apparently is on everyone's mind. Do I have sex? And how do I have sex? In knowing the answers, I don't think it's legitimately like how I have sex. I think they might be asking a more generic question. How do disabled people have sex? Because once I tell you my answer, I don't think it's going to be that interesting, honestly. The first thing we probably should cover is that disability is not a monolith. You can't just say disabled people. That's as silly as saying, how do women have sex? As though it's different than how men have sex. Or how do 40-year-olds have sex? Well, the same way 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds do it? I mean, if you start talking about 80-year-olds, it might be a little different. A little, but not a lot. So how do disabled people have sex? Kind of like everyone else? But because all disabilities are not the same, how a blind person has sex versus a deaf person versus a mobility impaired person, it's difficult to lump them all together and then try and give a monolith answer. So let's just break it down a little. First, I can only personally speak from my own experience. So I will answer the first question, how do I have sex? Then I'll go to a more generic answer that addresses more broadly about a variety of disabilities. The best way to approach this is with the types of questions I've had. I seem to get 4 types of questions, varying degrees of these themes. One is position, stamina, fragility or sturdiness, and endurance. So let's talk about them. Positions. My disability is spinal muscular atrophy type 3. I'm going to do a video on that, my personal channel, so you can learn all about the specifics of my disability. But within my disability, I am relatively strong, like a type 3 is stronger than a type 2. So I'm unusually strong within my group. And although I got my wheelchair in 2017, so a few years ago, I don't use it at home. I only use it when I'm out of the house. So at home, you could say I have an invisible disability because you can't necessarily see it. But out in public nowadays, ever since I got my chair, that's all they see. And so they imagine that I'm, what do they love to say? That I'm wheelchair bound or confined to a wheelchair. None of these things are true. One of the misconceptions we're addressing on this channel is that people can have a wheelchair and be ambulatory, meaning walking. So we need to change the way people see wheelchair and the way they see disability. So in my case, I'm very capable still of showering myself. I cook dinner, but I don't stand in there for long periods of time. Things like laundry, things that are physically demanding, I can't do. But I don't have a full-time caregiver. I don't need help getting dressed. Instead, I changed my wardrobe, which is a different episode we're going to cover on the other channel. But just so you understand, for the most part, I'm still kind of behaving in a more able-bodied fashion, which means my sex looks pretty much like other people's sex. Even when I was full-time walking and didn't have any mobility aids, my sex was an adapted version of sex. Do I jump around like an acrobat? Nope, never did. In the olden days, I think I tried to be on top, but it was just way too difficult for me. I didn't have enough strength. So how do I have sex? Well, I don't have it on top. The only adaptation that I can think that I have made to my sex life versus other people's sex lives is not a lot of acrobatics. And I've told people that throughout my dating life. So I'm not hiding it. I say I have a disability. It limits my strength. So I'm not going to be doing acrobatics in the bedroom. So far, I didn't have anybody complain about that. Psst, hey, it's me. If you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting the show by becoming a patron and give a love tap to the like button. Just follow the Patreon link below to get exclusive membership benefits. It's no surprise our content isn't widely embraced. So your support helps ensure our tribe continues to grow and thrive. Thanks. All right, bye. Back to the video. I'd say since getting my chair, the only other adaptation that I have made is that for changing positions or rolling over, I may say to my partner, like, hey, can you give me a shove? Can you just like help me roll or pull me this way? It's easier if someone helps move me. into a different position. And again, since that's kind of part of sexy play and wrestling around, somebody might just flip you around and not a big deal. Non-disabled people do these same things, so it's not really different. Now, because I watch channels like Roll with Cole and Charisma or Squirmy and Grubs, where there are different kinds of disabilities, where they are in an interabled relationship and the curious masses want to know,
how do you have sex? What's your sexual lifestyle?
I've watched them struggle because they are also uncomfortable talking about these taboo topics. The sex part of the taboo, obviously not the disability part of the taboo. I've watched them struggle and I thought, I'd like to do whatever I can to bridge the gap between two taboos that are uncomfortable for both parties to talk about. Let me be the conduit that connects the disabled world and the non-disabled world while talking about a topic that makes most people uncomfortable, sex. Again, when it comes to positions with either a spinal cord injury or a more severe version, technically, in case you didn't know, Shane and I have the same disorder. He just has a different type than I do and therefore more limited strength. So in terms of positioning, the easiest way that I can address a broader scope of disabilities, physical disabilities, let's say, I suspect they mean how do disabled people have sex when they have a physical disability or a mobility limitation. So if it's a physical disability and we're talking about the 4 questions I get, the position question for more broad disability is that you get creative. The best thing I can say as an analogy for people is that it's like being pregnant. No one ever goes up to somebody and says, oh, well, how did you have sex when you were pregnant? I mean, physically, how did that work? Most people just figure it out. Not a big deal. So if we're all going to put on our thinking caps like we're thinking about how pregnant women, 9 months pregnant, have sex, then let's put on our thinking caps and say, how do people with physical limitations have sex? Well, they get creative. You get into a position that works for you. As long as one person's nibbly bits and another person's nibbly bits can touch, then problem solved. Additionally, I feel compelled to mention that all sexual interaction does not need to include vaginas and penises. I mean, there's a ton of sex that can be had, sexuality, intimacy, bonding, and closeness that can be had without penises and vaginas touching. I mean, honestly, penises and vaginas are necessary to procreate for the most part. I mean, unless you do science. If we are talking about positioning, just to get creative. Oftentimes you could do spooning is a good one. Spooning is super easy. Even if you have contractures and your body is drawn up and has lost its range of motion, you can still do creative positions like spooning. Scissoring is a good one too. As long as your parts can touch, you're going to be able to have procreative type sex. There's all kinds of interesting positions in terms of oral sex, which is what I suggest even for non-disabled people. I personally suggest one person focus on another person 100%. I personally believe that oral sex is a 100% give, 100% receive action. I have never really bought into this whole 69, 50%, 50%. In my opinion, you're doing a half-assed job giving and a half-assed job receiving. I want to fully pleasure my partner and know that they are fully enjoying it. And I too would like to be fully pleased and let my partner know that I am fully 100% receiving the gift. So that's another part of sexuality and disability that can be 100% achieved regardless of your limitations. So position, I feel like we've covered that. If I have missed any really obvious questions, because again, I don't always think from the outside the box perspective. If I've missed any of those questions you may have, please put them down below and I am more than willing to address them, maybe in a part 2 video. The next topic would be stamina. I've had people say, oh yeah, but I mean, can you really have sex for very long? Like, do you get tired out or how does that work? Well, I'm not sure if it's more based on age or because I have a progressive disorder that gets more progresses more, makes me weaker, whatever. If that's what's affecting my stamina, But in this category, I'd also like to point out that non-disabled sex has variations of its endurance. Sometimes, if you've had a long day of work, you just want to get your rocks off for 10 or 15 minutes and roll over and go to sleep. More often than not, that's how you're doing it because life is getting in the way. And yet people don't come up to you and go, how's your stamina? There are also times when you do go away for a romantic weekend and you're lounging around, caressing, cuddling, canoodling, and all the rest of that stuff. On those times, yeah, you can have sex for longer, but that triggers another question. Technically, what is sex? Sex can be penetration, fondling, foreplay, kissing. So when someone asks me, how's your stamina and how long do you have sex for? Honestly, without playing dumb, I'm literally unsure of how to answer their question. Like, I've never really drawn up an outline really, so there should be some kissing in the beginning, there should be some nibbling, I don't know. If someone said, I'm gonna come over and ravage you for 3 hours, the thought of that is fatiguing to me. Somewhere in there I was like, can we take a break and get some water and maybe go to the bathroom or something? But honestly, I think that's more my age than my disability. So the answer to the curious minds of how's your stamina? My stamina's okay. It's probably less than another able-bodied person of my age. I do have a higher sex drive than my contemporaries, so the drive probably pushes beyond any fatigue and adds to my stamina. But in the general area of disability, I will acknowledge that a lot of disabled people have asked, how do I improve my stamina? How do I improve my longevity? I would like to be able to do this longer. So I can't say that stamina is not a problem for all disabilities. For the general, how do disabled people have sex in terms of stamina? It's probably a little less, but not enough to really worry about. Then we have the ever popular question of, am I too frail? Am I too fragile? Am I gonna break? And as humorous as that is to me, I generally quip back like, oh, don't worry, you won't break me. Bigger men than you have tried. They haven't actually tried to break me. We have had vigorous sex, at which point I did not break. Fragility. Oh, are you too fragile? Every man thinks he's like,
I'm going to crush you.
okay, you're not gonna crush me. Me. You're not gonna crush me. Can you crush other people with disabilities? Probably. You're not gonna do it without knowing. You're going to be attentive to your partner. They're gonna tell you if there's too much pressure. At the end of the day, the most important aspect is, are you communicating with your partner? Questions will be asked and questions can be answered as long as you're willing to talk to your partner. So as much as a man thinks he's going to crush me, if he just listens to me tell him and communicate, okay, you're squishing me, I can't breathe, or you're pinning my leg in a position that doesn't feel good. Unfortunately, so few people actually know what works for them, even if they are not disabled. Very few people know themselves and can communicate with their partner. I distinctly remember my very innocent, naive opinion that
It's the man's job to please me. It's his job to figure this out.
I laugh at my younger self and I'm like, no, babe, you need to know what works for you. We'll cover that later when we talk about masturbation. If people do know themselves and therefore can communicate what works best for them, then all of this query about how disabled people have sex will all be resolved. Finally, I often get asked about endurance, which is a little bit like stamina. Stamina is maybe like how much energy you have during it, and then endurance is how long can you go. My endurance today is based more on my age and level of energy based on the activities of the day. Also hormones. I'm reaching this lovely point where my hormones are all whacking out just like in puberty. And some days I'm more randy than others. But that's me. That's not all disabilities. What's the endurance for all disabilities? Again, I'd say communicate with your partner. I might even say, like, for disabled people who don't have a lot of sexual experience and don't know themselves well enough and therefore can't communicate to their partner, I would say go in being honest and saying, look, I haven't done this a lot, or I have a progressive disorder, so I'm not really sure what I can do. Typically, I find that people are pretty willing to just go with the flow. All right, well, let's see what we can do. It's kind of like erectile dysfunction. You know, a man at a particular age or physical condition could really be into it for the evening. Could be all like, but his body's just not there. His partner's got to be understanding and say, that's fine. We can do other non-penetrative things and still have a connection and still have intimacy and all the rest of that stuff. So if I'm going to somewhat summarize this topic, it's going to be disabled people can have sex. Now you know. Positions can be worked around. Stamina can be worked around. Whether someone's fragile or not fragile may or may not be a problem and can easily be discussed between two people. And whether you have the endurance, how long this is gonna go. Yeah, all of those questions will be addressed like any person who has a condition, like a person with epilepsy may have problems with the lights being on or off. A person with diabetes may not be able to go 3 hours without eating. A person who's carrying extra pounds may not have the stamina or be able to do the position. So honestly, I would just like society as a whole to look at disability like any other condition. The good news is, in the next episodes, we're going to be addressing all kinds of specific things that anyone with or without a disability will be learning about themselves. We will see you next time when we are changing misconceptions about sex and disability. Bye!